Hello, and welcome into a different type of video than what I'm going to usually be putting on this channel, but I would like to make this a yearly thing going forward. Now, with the holidays in full swing, tomorrow, an hour and 15 minutes from now, is Thanksgiving. That means that Black Friday is the following day, but we all know that now Christmas starts, well, now it starts November 1st, but it used to start at midnight on Black Friday, and then it shifted to 6 p.m. and now it's like noon on Black Friday. And man, I'm like still hanging on to Halloween here. I'm clinging to my horror movies and still trying to embrace the holidays and enjoy it. So this video right here is me not even half, like 30% embracing Christmas, 70% clinging on to Halloween desperately. So I thought, how can I make something spooky with the holidays? And I thought, why not do my very first 31 for 31? Also, I know it's 31 on 31, but it's 31 for 31. 31 on 31 just doesn't make any fucking sense. Now, I tried for a nice mix of horror styles. I also threw in some holiday classics to, like I said, semi-embrace Christmas coming. Definitely trending more into the spooky department than the Christmassy yada 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 hey department. But if I'm gonna do this video, I feel like I need to be dressed for the occasion, so give me a second. Much better. Alright, let's do this thing. Can I get some kind of spooky music? Nice. Alright, starting off at number 1. The Babadook. I love this movie. I haven't seen it lately, and I'm very excited to watch it in a couple days. Now, if you're unfamiliar with The Babadook, it is a woman and her son, and they're both grieving the loss of the woman's husband and the dad, and the kid is freaking out, and then suddenly there's a monster in the house, and the monster is the Babadook. And the Babadook is just an allegory for grief, basically, and I think I think everybody has a Babadook, and I think we all need to just embrace our Babadook, because at the end of the movie, and I already told you there was going to be spoilers in this, I already told you, I warned you, I told you this, but at the end of the movie, it's not like a usual horror where the monster is dead, or, like, nope, the Babadook just lives with them now. So, day 1. Check. Alright, day 2. Dawn of the Dead, the 2004 edition. I've seen the original. I'm just gonna come right out and say it. I appreciate the old horror movies and stuff. I just, I'm sorry, man. I appreciate it. I like more modern horror. I just find it more visually entertaining to me. Anywho, Dawn of the Dead 2004. The mall is the best setting. Like, this is the movie I think of when people say zombie movie. It's this movie. And then you could probably go, I'll save it because there's a couple of them on this list. But anyway, also, so many people got introduced to Richard Cheese and his cover of, Down with the Sickness by Disturbed. And just look that man up. Anything by Richard Cheese is awesome. Anything. Another thing I like about this movie is it isn't your standard, like, type zombies. It's like, they're like moving fast, whipping back and forth, running full speed. That's the sort of shit that I'm here for when it comes to zombies. I want to be scared. I appreciate the lumpy kind of zombies and the waves of them, like these brainless hordes. But imagine that at full speed. Like, alright, so for day 3, it's another modern horror movie, came out this year, but I'm gonna have to go with Longlegs. It was another pretty hyped up, well marketed horror movie. I'm glad that I gave it a chance. I didn't want to because honestly some of the marketing, it was well marketed, but it was kind of over marketed, and my thing is if there's too much hype, I need to just wait it out. And with Longlegs, my wife's a big Nicolas Cage fan. We both love horror, so she talked me into it, and man, I'm so glad she did. This movie was just classic, fucking weird Nicolas Cage, and I love it. I love when Nicolas Cage gets to just turn into a fucking goof. Like, if you want any sort of context before watching this, not for the movie, but for the type of Nicolas Cage performance I'm talking about, since you're here on YouTube, why don't you go up to the search bar and type in Nicolas Cage losing his shit. Not even kidding. It's the first video that's gonna come up. It's a 2.5-3 minute compilation of just clips from Nicolas Cage movies of him just going full apeshit Nicolas Cage. Watch it, please. But Longlegs is really weird and supernatural, and it's cool because it's like a detective movie. A detective movie with weird Nicolas Cage. Check it out if you haven't already. Alright, day 4. We are now onto one of my personal favorite movies of all time. It gets a lot of hate, and I guess I understand it. I don't. Actually, you know what? I don't understand it. This is me, like Billy, yelling about people don't understand the complexities of this cinematic masterpiece. It's not even complex. I literally have on my notes, the simplicity is what I like about it. But the dynamic between the two main characters being stuck in this house after the woman says no when the man proposes, and it's just this weird heavy dynamic. They're stuck in this house in the middle of nowhere, so to speak, and they just get terrorized by the locals. 3 locals, but it's just man. Now, I haven't seen the new Strangers yet because I'm afraid that it's just gonna ruin what I have with this movie, because that's happened with me in a lot of sequels in the past. I still haven't seen Anchorman 2, and I just don't think I'm going to. But with The Strangers, I love it. It's just nice and easy. It's just a simple setting, and it's scary in that setting. Please, please, please watch The Strangers, please. Day 5. The original VHS. Now, I am a total sucker for anthologies. Not even just movies, but you give me Wasteland, Stories of the Apocalypse, 2 books. It's just a bunch of short stories about the apocalypse. Feed me that shit all day long. So good. In VHS, I remember when this movie came out. It was 2012, so semi-recently-ish. But there was a lot of hype around it. I love found footage stuff. I love things that feel like I'm not supposed to see it. But if you haven't seen this movie yet, just sit down and try to find the first story from the first movie. From this movie, you just find the one where it's the guy trying on the spy glasses, okay? You just find that story. Watch it. I Like You is just trapped in my head. Even when I'm old and dementia-ridden, I'm still gonna just someday stare up at some nurse just covered in spittle and just go, I like you. Also, if you're new to horror anthologies, this is your jumping off point. I don't care what anybody else says. You can. This is pure opinion, but me, this is your jumping off point. Day 6, you knew it was gonna be on the list. Terrifier 1. Now, I was a holdout. This movie was so talked about, and Killer Clown, and just everything about it to me just screamed like, fuck this. This is just so blah. People are just doing this for something, and I don't understand. I didn't understand what it was, and then I just sat down and I watched it, and I understood immediately. You know exactly what kill I'm talking about. You know exactly what kill. But the best part is just like art. It's just now like this horror legend. And he just does this shit just cuz. And in the first movie, he's just a guy. He's just a clown. Just goes around and just does horrible, horrible shit. In a lot of movies, when you have a horror icon, they have their weapons. You got your machetes and your claws and yada yada. Art will use anything. The dude uses a gun. Just a regular handgun. And just pew pew pew. Like, I just remember I fired it up on my projector and I was just sitting there like, what the like over and over again. And I forgot, like, Terrifier reignited my appreciation and love of horror movies again. I hadn't watched a lot of movies because my wife and I, we had seen some fucking stinkers. And it pushed me away from horror for a little bit, and Terrifier just grabbed me and was like, welcome back, bitch. You've probably seen Terrifier. If you haven't, I get it. I understand. I understand why. But if you can get past the gallons and gallons and gallons of blood, it's a fun movie. We are a week into this. Let's pop up our first Christmas movie, Year Without a Santa Claus, 1974. Obviously a classic. You have seen this movie, unless you're a child, which, why are you watching this? Why are you here? I am covered in blood. To me, you can't have Christmas without this movie. I know you got your Rudolphs and all that, and some things are coming up on this list, but this movie specifically makes me think about my mom. And you can't even get me started on Snow Miser and He Miser. Like, dude, those characters are just so, I don't know if prolific is the word, but you could show them to me in 40 years and I'll immediately know. And it's insane that these, I mean, and I know 1974 is not that long ago, but this is going to be one of those movies that just drives into the future. It's just one of those ones. It's just how it's going to be. And I understand why. It's also insane to me to think that Elf has been out for 20 years. Like, what the hell? But any of these old Rankin Bass style or Rankin Bass Christmas movies are deeply ingrained inside of me. My mother, growing up, I'm sure everybody's mom wanted you to watch these movies, but especially this one in my house. Now, I told you I'm sticking modern, and I'm even sticking on platform with this pick for day number 8, which is Talk to Me from 2022. This movie was talked about. It was talked about, and it should have been. It was YouTubers with a rare full-length W. A lot of the times when a YouTuber does a big project, I can't be fucked. I don't care. It's just, it comes out like ass, and then I just sit there, and then they have to put out a whole, well, I thought that would have went better, I'll try harder next time, and then the crowd just destroys their project and stuff. But with Talk to Me, A24 was like, let's do this shit. And for me, that was what put A24 on the map for me and caught my attention, because obviously they produced, I'm pretty sure, every movie since 2022, and some of them have been bangers, some of them have been big old stinkers. A few of them are probably on this list. But it was just nice to see a couple YouTubers get a shot, make something of it, and make something cool and memorable. Talk to Me is a super fun movie, and it's a bunch of people you've never heard of getting a shot in a sick horror movie. So go out and watch Talk to Me. Well, don't go out and watch Talk to Me, just download it. Alright, number 9. The original Quiet Place movie. Not the new prequel that just came out. That movie sucked. Don't watch that one. Watch this one. My wife was the one that actually introduced me to this. She had seen it before I had and talked it up. And I'm obviously down to see a John Krasinski film. I like that I didn't really know what the bad guys were until obviously this new fucking dump. But I also like when a movie feels hopeless, and that's what this movie felt. Obviously the scene with the kid hits a little different, being a parent now. Ow. But gotta drive that plot somehow. A Quiet Place 2 is also a decent movie. I'm not taking away from that. But this new prequel that they did just really doesn't do it for me. But get yourself a copy of A Quiet Place, grab some popcorn, grab some Oreos, grab a dangerous amount of root beer or something, and just get spooked out for a little bit. We have reached double digits, day 10. Time for another of my favorite movies of all time, Shaun of the Dead. I remember this came out when I was a freshman in high school, and we ended up getting a DVD copy of it when I was a sophomore in high school. I burned that disc dead out. I had to have done that. This movie is just deeply burned into me, and I just watched it the other day. I couldn't find anything else to watch, so what did I do? I ran to my comfort movie, Shaun of the Dead. To me, this is a perfect movie. You got zombies, you got homies, you got fart jokes, and then you have clever jokes bookended with just like crazy violence. Fun violence. This movie also makes me really miss going to the bar. You know, I know horror comedy is not anything new, but there have been some awful horror comedies, and to me, Shaun of the Dead is the pinnacle, gold standard, AAA, 5 Michelin star, 2 thumbs up. Mwah! I love you. I love you. I love you. Now for day number 11, I have kind of a weird pick at Mad God. This movie is like, if you've ever seen the show Crashbox on HBO, the children's animated show, it's like if the people who made Crashbox were also necromancers on fentanyl and made a movie. I didn't understand what I was looking at. Phil Tippett, my goodness, sir, beautiful movie to look at. The creatures, weird, creepy. The whole movie was just a literal fever nightmare. It was one of the most insane things I've ever seen. I will say, it's tough to sit through at times. There isn't any dialogue, basically. There's a man that says, I think, 9 words at basically the very end of the film. But it's a lot of gibberish. It's a lot of creature sounds. It's just a lot of fun visuals, basically. But if you're looking for a movie that probably not a lot of people have seen or gotten after, Mad God, fun, but a bit of a trudge, I'll say that. Alright, day 12. You knew this was going to be on the list. You knew this was going to be on the list. Human Centipede. Come on. You've heard about this movie. I've heard about this movie. Your mom has probably heard about this movie. And shout out to your mom. That's a cool ass mom. I do remember this was the first bootleg DVD I ever managed to get my hands on. And that's another one we just drove through because I was the guy who got it and immediately called all the homies and was like, guess who got Human Centipede on DVD? There have been sequels to Human Centipede, but they're just not this movie. The second one is wild and they just get more and more ignorant, but this one felt like they actually wanted to make a meaningful, impactful, like memorable horror movie. And then the second one was like, alright, well, let's just make it bigger. And then the third one was like, oh, 2009 Sci-Fi Network is producing it, sort of thing. It looked like Sharknado by the end of it. And it's a shame because this franchise is unintentionally hilarious. But by the end of it, they realized what they were. But check this one out if you just want what this franchise wanted to be. I thought I'd be clever and for day 13 do 13 Ghosts. Now this movie dropped before we all had internet at home and were able to talk about this movie in particular. Now, I'm one of the people who, I'll call myself, I guess, a fence sitter about this movie, but on my list, I like this movie. 13 Ghosts, it's dog shit. It's a bad movie, but you got a Tony Shalhoub sighting. Always appreciate a Tony Shalhoub sighting. Rare. And the ghosts are fucking scary, dude. They're scary. I mean, obviously you got Matthew Lillard and obviously High, but dude, like, the torso? Really? Let's not sit here and act like that isn't the shit. 13 Ghosts gets 13 thumbs up. Now I get it, it's all more modern stuff, and day 14 is no different. We're 2 weeks into the month. Bow, Barbarian 2022. Why? Because horror's been having this nice resurgence for me lately, and I think Barbarian is another movie that kind of tipped it over for me. Am I partial to this movie because Justin Long is in it? Yep. Am I also partial to this movie because Zach Kreger, probably my favorite cast member from Whitest Kids You Know, is the director and writer? Also, yeah. This movie had Bill Skarsgård, another huge W. But I remember watching it with my wife, and I had really no idea what we were getting into. I just knew this movie was being talked about. it was being shouted from the rooftops about, if I'm being totally honest. And I know I said I'm not one that buys into the hype, but if a guy from Whitest Kids You Know is working on a project, I'm going to at least put my eyes on it. And with this movie getting as much regard as it did, it had to. I mean, the cast is awesome, and it's just, I don't know what I was getting into. And then when I was done, I was so satisfied. This movie is so good. It's so good. It's so much fun. Grab some homies and watch Barbarian, please. And stop using Airbnbs. The first one was on the list. You knew this one was coming. Terrifier 2. We have reached the sequel. Bigger budget, and it showed. They went the supernatural route. A little bit longer. This movie was more well received than the first one, critically, I guess. But I, at the time, still thought that the first one was better. I still do, but since the third one has come out, my list has kind of shifted in terms of where I put them. But this movie is just Terrifier again. You have the Clown Cafe scene, which is just, I think, the most blood I've seen in a movie. Especially a movie that's supposed to take place in what's called the Clown Cafe. Gallons of blood at the Clown Cafe. Also, the spooky little sidekick girl is spooky. She made me pee. I mean, she freaked me out. The scene that stands out the most to me, or at least the moment that stands out the most to me in this one, is, I'll just say, the mashed potato scene. I'll leave it at that. I guess if you haven't seen Terrifier 2 by now, even though it came out 2 years ago, and the hype is real, the mashed potato scene, I'll keep it vague. But the people who have seen it know exactly what I'm talking about. But this was just more hectic behavior from Art the Clown. Terrifier is Terrifier. You know what you're getting going into it. Moving on. Alright, we're hopping in a time machine back to 1964 for Rudolph. You've seen this movie. This movie is probably all burned into your brains just as much as it's burned into mine. I remember growing up, my mom would run out to, I think it was the local CVS was the only ones that sold it, were these porcelain statues. And they were all super nice, and she spent so much money on them. Oh my god. But our front bay window was all done up with this big Rudolph scene every year, and to me, this is Christmas. It's just, there's a warmth that sort of oozes out of this movie, and it just, I don't know, it just makes me feel like I'm sitting on the floor and the fireplace is going, and I can hear my mom kind of lightly singing the songs over my shoulder, and I'm just sitting there just totally enamored. So yeah, Rudolph, come on, who doesn't know the story, who doesn't know this movie? Also, the best part is with all these movies, there's an entire compilation on this platform that is several hours long of just all the old Christmas movies compiled into one. So you have no reason to not show people these movies going forward. Another one that has stood the test of time. Alright, we're getting into the thick of it. Day 17. Late Night with the Devil. Another recent movie, but again, I'm not going to hammer it home. David Dastmalchian is a guy that I wasn't super familiar with, but after this movie, I am a very big fan of. This movie was wild. I had a rough idea of what I thought was going to happen, and it kind of did, but the way that this movie went about, the violence and the scares, and just, it was believable. It felt real, especially for the time, because it's a movie that takes place in either the 50s or 60s, I'm pretty sure. It probably doesn't take place in the 50s or 60s at all. It probably takes place in the 70s or 80s or some shit. But they did a great job of the setting, of making it believable, and finally some good late night television. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this movie, I'll just give you a quick synopsis, but basically it's a guy who hosts a late night television show, and his ratings are steadily declining, and so he decides for the Halloween special, let's bring a girl who's clearly possessed into our studio. And scene. Late Night with the Devil, a lot of fun. Go check it out. Alright, we're not going too modern. We're going to 2004. Freshman in high school. OG Saw. OG Saw. This franchise has gotten so fucking out of control. I cannot handle it. I understand there's a demand for these movies because when I watched this movie, I watched it at a friend's birthday party, and there was about, say, 12 to 15 people there. I was one of 3 people in that room that stayed to the end of this movie because honestly, anything with Cary Elwes in it, I'm gonna tune into. Shout out Robin Hood Men in Tights for introducing me to that dude. But this franchise now has what, 12 movies if you include Spiral. I've completely lost track. I've lost touch, and honestly, I've lost interest in the Saw franchise. There's just too many. There's no way that Saw has a coherent story still. There's no way. But this one, this is just early 2000s schlock. Just fun, shock value for the sake of being shocking. This was the birth of the reverse bear trap. One of the coolest horror devices ever. But now, you've got Saw 10 and Spiral and fucking this and that, and just watch this movie. Maybe the second and third one, but just really watch just this Saw. Watch this one. Saw 1. Now, I know I mentioned Robin Hood Men in Tights in the last one, so that ties me into my next one. Young Frankenstein. Why does it tie it in? Another movie directed by my favorite Brooks, besides my family, is Mel Brooks. Famed director, and who's like 700 years old by now. And good for him. He deserves to be 700 years old. The man's a genius. But Young Frankenstein is exactly what it sounds like. It is a young doctor trying to make a Frankenstein-style monster. And you've got your standard wacky henchman, Igor, and just... there's too many lines in this movie, because that's the problem with Mel Brooks, is he writes so much funny stuff into his movies that there's so many bits that just come flying out. And the amount of times that I've gone, taffeta, to somebody and no one has a single clue what I'm talking about is so frustrating. Yes, there are other more memorable lines in this movie to quote, but dude, come on, just one person out there get what I'm talking about. But if you have cool parents, like I have cool parents, gather them. Who doesn't want to watch Young Frankenstein, man? Come on. So we've gone from the first one all the way to VHS Beyond, the latest edition of the VHS franchise. This one having more of a science fiction flair to every story. It's 6 stories. The last one, I think, is the weakest link, which is sad because it's got my homegirl Alana Pierce in it. We're not actually friends, but she's cool. And sadly, they made her get rid of her accent, which, like, what are we doing? But I'm not here to talk about that. What I am here to talk about is the parts of it that I did like, which, that skydiving one, bro, are you kidding me? That was so awesome, man. And I know I mentioned it before, but any, like, found footage or even analog's probably my favorite style of horror, but there's not a lot of good analog horror movies. But that's why I'm here on YouTube. You got guys like Wendigoon recommending incredible stuff, and that always steamrolls into you finding something else along those lines, because that's what this platform's great for. But with VHS, man, you guys keep making these movies, I will keep watching them. I love tuning into these, I love anthologies, and VHS just has always set a reasonably high bar, at least for me, in terms of their ability to make a good collection of spooky movies. Now we're going back to 1993 for one of my late sister's favorite movies of all time, Bow, Hocus Pocus, the original. Second one's not bad, I'll give it that much. Not the worst movie I've ever seen. Not a strong sequel though, and Sarah Jessica Parker looks always. But growing up, I would constantly hear this movie through the wall. My sister had a TV DVD little combo thing, and this was one of the DVDs she had, and she used it. Now obviously with her having passed on to the other side, this movie is definitely more of a beacon for me, and I definitely look forward to watching it every Halloween season. And now if I can incorporate it into a whole other 31 for 31 at the, you get 31 for October, take your break in November, jump right back in December, do Hocus Pocus, 2 months apart, I'm sure my sister would love that. But this movie is just chock full of just Halloween charm. It's old, good Disney made-for-TV movie, which, what is going on over at Disney right now? Like, what have they even been up to lately? Like, oh, I guess they got other stuff going on. All right, 3 days out from Christmas, day 22, Violent Night. Now, to me, this is just a revamping of just early 2000s shoot 'em up movies put into a modern flair, where they just went, you know what'd be cool? If Santa just kicked the shit out of everyone. Basically, these gangsters take a family hostage and Santa just shows up and says, no the fuck you don't, and just smokes everyone. This movie knew exactly what it was, and it gave me exactly what I wanted. Just some stupid, brainless, John Wick style violence with tinsel and some candy canes. Okay, in my household, this movie is a touchy subject because my wife really did not like it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Cabin in the Woods. I'm sure this is a hot button topic for a lot of people. I don't understand why though. What is so bad about this movie? I feel like it was weirdly like an important horror movie, and I feel like it needed to happen. Like, up until this point, I'd never seen a take like this on the horror aspect, where it's just literally essentially an SCP company containing every nightmare ever. And do not even try to tell me the jailbreak scene where they all get out is not high art, okay? Blood-soaked, stupid, very enjoyable. It's Christmas Eve. All the kids are asleep. You've set out the cookies and the milk, and you decide, I'm gonna stay up and watch this movie. Terrifier 3. This will certainly change the vibe of any Christmas Eve party. This movie's more of the same, but in a good way. You know what you're getting with Terrifier at this point. If you don't, if you've gone along on the journey through all three, we know what we're getting now. We're not gonna suddenly, oh wow, they went that. No, they did not. They're just gonna do this and pump it into my veins. Now, art was bad in the first two movies. In this one, yo, he is just evil. The shower scene, dude, like, fuck, man. Like, I remember after that, just like being actually a little exhausted, like I had just ran from something. It didn't activate my fight or flight response, but it sent my blood pressure skyrocketing. This is probably my second favorite movie in the series now. I would say it goes 1, 3, 2. They did leave room for a fourth one, and according to, was it David Howard Thornton, I believe is the name of the man who plays Art the Clown. I'm sorry, I should know that. But he was on Last Podcast on the Left, and he makes it sound like there's going to be 5, which to me, I'm going to be on board, but we're starting to reach unnecessary amount of sequel territory, and for me, horror is just needlessly known for that, and there needs to be a cap, and I think 5 is an okay number, but for Terrifier 3, tough to watch as always, but I had just as much fun as I had watching the first one for the first time, and I can't wait for the next one, so just keep making them, and I'm gonna just keep eating it up like a moron. It's Christmas! You know what I have for you this year? I have something really special. It's a double feature. The Crazies and Santa Claus is Coming to Town. A Santa Claus to Come into Town is just another classic Rankin Bass, beautiful little puppeted Christmas movie. I feel like I don't need to keep talking about these because these movies do enough to just propel themselves into the future. I mean, Santa Claus is Coming to Town came out in 1970. I mean, all these movies have been out for 50 years at least in terms of the Christmas movies. I don't really watch any modern Christmas movies because it's all Hallmark bullshit. But I would say kick this movie on while you're opening presents or you're getting the house ready for guests or something. And then, when the guests leave at the end of the night, let's fire up The Crazies. Another movie where the people who are zombies aren't just shuffling idiots. They're actually things that can sprint at full speed and grab you and wreck your shit. Plus the introduction to the bad stuff happening in the Crazies is so sick. Just the dude just walking into the middle of the baseball game. That's super memorable. So do yourself a favor. Start with something light, end with something heavy on Christmas. Alright, it's the day after Christmas. Nightmare Before Christmas, my sister's absolute favorite movie of all time. This is the embodiment of this list. This is obviously your perfect Halloween meets Christmas movie. That's the point. Obviously, I'm taking Halloween in a different direction and going more of the blood, guts sort of direction. But the music's great. Danny Elfman, you did it again, you crazy son of a bitch. Tim Burton. I have nothing else to add to that man's resume. You've seen Nightmare Before Christmas. Go watch it again. Think of my sister. Love you, happy birthday. So with the end of this list, I'm trying to keep in mind that we're doing the 31 for 31, and after Christmas there's always that weird, just kind of, everybody's kind of off kilter in between Christmas and New Year's, that 1 week of just, some of us have work, some of us work for 2 days, some of us don't work at all. So I'm trying to add a nice mix of movies to kind of just guide you into the new year. So we're gonna start with Beetlejuice, the original. If you haven't seen Beetlejuice by now, 1, what? And 2, do yourself a favor, just lie to yourself about the sequel. I just saw it. What a stinky, poopy, just shitty, needless money grab. This movie came out in 1988 and we're doing a sequel in 2024. There needs to be some sort of statute of limitations on sequels. This shit is absolutely unnecessary. This movie, however, is timeless, it's hilarious, and Michael Keaton just goes crazy. Just goes absolutely nuts. The man kills it. Everybody is great in this movie. And this is another Tim Burton movie. The dude just stays winning. Day 28, 28 days later. You see what I did there? Just as clever as the 13 Ghosts on day 13. Yeah! I feel like the Walking Dead show, basically the creators just watched this movie and went, yeah, we'll just turn this into a show that goes on too long and gets really terrible after season 3. I mean, I think it's safe to say that this is an ultimate fear for everybody. You just wake up out of some sort of medical condition and the planet is basically missing. I don't know how somebody would be like, that's my favorite thing, that's the best possibility ever. Like, we get it, Edgelord, you're really cool. And there are times where this movie feels completely hopeless. There are sequels to the movie, and I think there's another one coming out soon, which please don't. And Cillian Murphy's come a long way from showing his wiener and butt in this movie to Peaky Blinders, which is now like a Netflix staple anchor program. But 28 Days Later does a nice job of making you feel super duper alone. There's some movies where it's the end of the world and it just doesn't feel like it, but this movie truly does feel like it's over. We have reached the final 3, ladies and gentlemen. And for day 29, Rocky Horror Picture Show. A perfect movie for that weird space in between Christmas and New Year's, because this whole movie is just kind of the weird space between Christmas and New Year's. If you're unfamiliar with the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which some of you may be, musicals aren't for everybody, especially this kind of musical. I'm gonna give you a quick synopsis. 2 people break down in a car, they find this weird building. The weird building is a castle owned by a man named Dr. Frankenfurter, who's played by Tim Curry, who in this movie puts on an incredible performance as Dr. Frankenfurter, where it's your classic Frankenstein story, but instead of making just a monster, he's specifically trying to make like a sexy man because he's a transvestite from transsexual Transylvania. Are you keeping up? Are you? Are you really though? Now this is a musical, like I said, it's not for everybody, but if you can appreciate 70s, 80s music, you got a young Meatloaf in this movie going crazy, and then he gets murdered. Great movie. Weird as all shit, absolutely strange, but you got Tim Curry in drag, and then you got him as Nigel Thornberry. I'm not sure this man is incapable of anything. I know this pick is a little more on the fringe, but listen, there's vampires in it, that fucking counts as far as I'm concerned, okay? I also understand that this movie is technically historical fiction. I just choose to believe that it's actually factually accurate. Don't even get me going on this movie. This movie knew exactly what it was doing, and they crushed it. There's a part where there's a fight scene that takes place where Abraham Lincoln is chasing a vampire over a horse stampede. They're just running across wild horses. The man's axe can be pulled and turned into a gun that shoots one silver bullet. There's a scene where a man drifts a horse-drawn carriage into an old New Orleans style plantation house to knock a vampire off of Abraham Lincoln. Drifts a horse carriage. This movie gets basically no respect. Please help me change that. Please watch Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and please tell all of your friends to do it as well. It's so awesome! Well, this is it, ladies and gentlemen, number 31, and it is a fucking doozy. Boom! Dagon. Now this hunk of shit from 2001 is... I don't really know how to tell people about Dagon. I just tell people a quick synopsis. It's a guy and his fiance or whatever and her family, and they're on a boat and they hit some rough seas and the boat capsizes, usual stuff. So the guy takes the emergency raft to a town in what looks and sounds like Italy or something like that. But you quickly find out the entire town is fish people. And all the fish people in the town worship worship Dagon. This is the type of movie where on New Year's Eve, the party is getting up to midnight. Kick this movie on at about 11:50. Just leave it on in the background. And then right as the ball drops, turn and just start your year off with a movie that not a lot of people have seen worldwide. I mean, this movie had a decent budget and made like 14 grand globally. So you and I might be in a group of, I don't know, 8,000 people. But I also love Dagon. It is terrible and dumb and charming and unintentionally hilarious, and I want to watch it all the damn time. Well, there you have it, folks. My very first 31 for 31. I had a good time. This was fun. I think I'm going to make this a yearly thing. Let me know down below if there's any movies you think I should have included. Let me know if there's any movies you're mad that I included. Thank you very much for watching. Have a lovely holiday season. Today is technically Thanksgiving, so if you're not going to be watching this the day of, but happy late Thanksgiving, happy early holidays, Merry early Christmas, and let's watch some spooky movies, guys. Bye-bye!